hand, we've had the 62nd anniversary of the People's National Congress celebrating in Linden. And of course, Granger gave his, quote, "Give us a chance" speech at a rally in Linden to mark the anniversary. For me, listening to this speech, it was a pathetic speech of desperation by a leader who knows he will not win the 2020 elections. The speech reflects a state of siege mentality of the government. His appeal to Lindeners when he has done little to improve the lives of that region, and in fact they've seen reversals and broken promises. No appeal to the, quote, "Linden loves the PNC and the PNC loves Linden. It is a love affair. You have stood by us through hard times and we will stand by you. PNC will never let Linden down," end quote. This is what Granger told the 2,000 odd crowd. But certainly it's a level of bypass to be able to tell people that when you know that the conditions of Linden in particular and Region 10 have worsened, as all the 10 regions of our country. Jobs are scarce. They're the ones who closed down the call center. Now he says he's going to reopen it. They're the ones who promised thousands of house lots. Now they didn't do any. Now they're talking about 500 house lots. But do they really believe that the people of Region 10 have short memories, or that the Lindeners have short memories? Mr. Granger called the relationship unshakable solidarity. Well, I'll give you my own amusement on this. This love affair between Linden and the PNC was so strong that 30 buses and many vehicles were used to fetch people to Linden, with school children in uniform, to make up the 2,000 odd crowd in Congress Square, Linden. So this love affair was so powerful that you had to bring in over 1,000 people from outside of Linden to show your so-called strength. Clearly, Mr. Granger has serious difficulties recognizing that the PNC APNU AFC has no transport or title for any area in Guyana, including Linden. It has failed its supporters after all the broken promises of the May 2015 elections. And you know, as all women know, when they're fooled by a man, they have great difficulties trusting them in the future. And so, you know, what the other saying is that fool me once, you know, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And so I don't believe the Lindeners will continue to have wool pulled over their eyes by the People's National Congress and the APNU AFC coalition. They have waited patiently for 4 years and 4 months, and they will wait another 4 months for the elections. Does the government believe that in the 4 months they're going to spend money like wild to keep the promises they never kept with the Lindeners? Absurd. Totally absurd. He went on to say that from the time we were born to lead, and we're leading the country to greater independence now in 2019. From the time it came in the government, the PNC demonstrated it was fit to lead. Well, this is a rather odd language, a statement. Is this coded language? Is he saying that they're the only ones can lead? And is it that it's a birthright that the PNC can lead? What is he really saying? And the fact that the country having great independence in 2019, well, certainly not the case, based on the fact that our oil agreements have basically given away our patrimony for next to nothing. That's a form of independence, not just about getting up there and shouting from the rooftops that we're a sovereign nation, but also sovereign in terms of representing the interests of our people. And so, what is this coded language? What is the coded language? Is he saying that the PNC by birth are born with the right to lead? Obviously, everybody is born with leadership qualities. Some people are stronger leaders than others, better leaders than others. But there is not one particular organization in Guyana or one particular group of people who are, you know, gifted with a birth to lead, a birthright to lead. And so again, these are odd statements. And then, of course, his conclusion, which was rather pathetic. Look at our record. We deserve another 5 years to carry on the work that we've started. Give us a chance, he says. Well, how do you give someone a chance who hasn't done anything much? really. What they did was finish off some of the projects that the PUP had in line. In fact, I was highly amused at some ads recently coming out on Facebook from the APNU AFC supporters. And the photographs they're showing are of PPP projects that we did. So they can't even find photographic or footage to show the projects that they did do. And so, of course, we have lots of footage on the number of things and expenditures and scandals that have taken place in our country and the level of corruption. Well, clearly, Mr. Granger is begging for a second chance. And some people will vote for him. That's their right. But the majority of people will not vote for Granger nor the APNU and AFC. Because this country in 4 years, 4 months, and by the time we have elections, is going down, down all the time. Let me just give you an example. The IMF latest staff report of 2019 shows that the Guyana public sector operations, this is billions of Guyana dollars, that the revenue generated for 2018 was 226.9 billion, and the expenditure for the by the government was 254.8 billion. Therefore, we're in deficit of $27.9 billion. Let's go to 2019, which we are in the process. We're right now in 2019. The amount of money that has come in, tax revenue, oil revenue, other revenue, grants, is 249.5 billion. That's the projection. Expenditure for 2019, 292.3 billion, which in fact means that we have a deficit of $42.8 billion. And if we continue on this trend that this government has us on, and they win back again and they get into government again, we will continue on this trend of spending more money than what we're earning and putting our country into horrible debt and having great consequences for the economy and for the quality of life of our people. Well, the voters may not know these statistics, but they do know in their daily lives that the government has been an abysmal failure with broken promises, incompetence, ineptitude, corruption, and divorce from the people. Let me just give you an example, the most recent one. This is an official gazette that came out on October the 5th, the day before the Linden rally. It is Order 71 of 2019, Prospecting Permit Medium Scale Exemption Order 2019. And remember, I've talked about keeping it in the family. When I've talked about APNU AFC, that they're keeping it in the family. Well, this is another example of keeping it in the family. Here is the minister waiving, exempting a number of individuals from being involved with paying the fees and other procedures to do with mining concessions for medium scale mining, right? So they're not required, they're exempt from application, procedures, etc. And lo and behold, when you read the list of names, one name sticks out very, very strongly. One is Troy Brooms, the son of Minister Brooms. And so here you got it. Now this order was signed September the 15th, 2019, but it was only gazetted on October the 5th, 2019. So this was issued before September 2018, September the 18th, but it was only gazetted on October the 5th. And these are people who are being given, and most of them are sympathetic to the government, if not full supporters of the government. And they've been given vital mining concessions in Region 1, Northwest, in the Cayuni, Region 7, and in the Mazaruni, Middle Mazaruni and Upper Mazaruni in Region 7. So this is making sure before elections come, a whole set of people they've carved out and given out the land for people by exempting, because all these things have to do application of process and time periods. So what they've done is expedited all the procedures by exempting them to allow these people to have access to large areas of land of our country for mining purposes. And at the same time, of course, while this is going on, and while this comes out on October 5th, the eve of the National Two-Shores Council, where the issues of Amerindian land and mining and the issue of mining impacting on their communities is being washed over by the government and the ministers while we speak here, yesterday, today, etc. So we have instances over and over again. Same minister, similar minister has enough money to buy two very new model vehicles for herself and son in the last month or two, going up to probably about $40 million or more for the two vehicles. But of course, how do ministers make that kind of money? She said she wasn't running her mining companies, but we exposed on this program that her royalty she gets for the land that she has in contractual agreement with the foreign mining company brings in hundreds of thousands of US dollars every year for her as royalty. And of course, let's go back to Granger and what he said, because they will say that all my figures are wrong. He makes a big announcement that last year we had $89 billion in new investments. In 1 year alone, he says. The funny thing, this statement was made last year during the budget debate. And up to now, and including the Mr. Granger's statement, no one on the government side has said, what are these investments? Where are they? What is the value of each one of them? Because you know what? I think it's all a fiction. It's all a fiction. Why would you announce you have $89 billion investment in 1 year, and nobody has come forward from the government, from the Go Invest, no minister, no president, to say, here is what these investments are. Here is where they're going. Here's going to be the impact of these investments. Silence. And so until they produce a document to show it, I'm saying it's all a fiction and it's meant to fool people. What I find completely astounding is his statements on security, where his claim to fame for the achievements in regards to security of our people is that, and here I quote from him, we've done away with the hooliganism of the PPP, the massacres, the troubles. We've done away with the death squads, the phantom units, end quote. First of all, the crime wave, the most violent crime wave of our history, ended in January, February 2008, long before APNU came into government. Secondly, Mr. Granger again seems to be living in another world, in that he forgets the role of the People's National Congress and leaders of the People's National Congress, many of whom are in government now, and ministers, who are part of the crime wave, who encouraged and supported and coordinated and aligned themselves with the crime wave, because the objective of the most violent crime wave was to overthrow the People's Progressive Party government. It was to overthrow the PVPC, whether by means of forcing the government to collapse and therefore to force elections, or whether it was to really overthrow the government. Mr. Granger is right in terms of the troubles. The times need to be written. And we have been calling on him to have a mega commission of inquiry on the crime wave. Let's start from the 1960s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Let's go all the way up. Let's have a mega one to see who have been the ones behind the hooliganism in our country. Who are the persons who are responsible? The funny thing about this statement too is that he is ignored. Forget about what he's distorting on the crime wave of the 2002-2008. But let's deal with today. He's ignored the horrible crime levels in the country today. You open the newspapers, people are murdered in their houses by robbers. A robber goes in for a television and $11,000 and murders an old man, gags him. He dies over and over and over. People are being murdered for nothing. This is senseless, serious, and destructive crime. And yet, Mr. Granger lords over this all, lords over it all, as if none of this matters. The lives of our people who are dying, who are being maimed and injured, many of them will never be the same psychologically, physically in their life after these robberies and terrible shootings. And he sits there like Pontius Pilate and says, oh, we've solved the security problem. We got rid of the phantom. We got rid of the troubles. Well, I want to remind Mr. Granger that the AK guns that were stolen from the GDF with the collaboration of certain people in the GDF, some of whom are advisors right now, those AK weapons are still around. Only a few were found after between 2002 and 2008. And the question he must ask is, why has the government had no appetite to find those weapons if they're saying that the troubles are over and they've succeeded in bringing an end to the troubles? The interesting thing is that Mr. Granger was so concerned about the opposition working in Linden that he had to tell the Lindeners that they must pay no heed and remember that the opposition, the oppression they felt under the People's Progressive Party. Clearly, he does not trust the Lindeners to think for themselves. Again, this is this imperial superiority attitude he has to working people. And this almost militaristic approach to people that they don't think for themselves. All they do is to follow orders. The Lindeners will be the Lindeners. They will vote according to what they think is in their best interest. So will all of Region 10. So will all of Region 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. People this time will vote for their conscience more than ever before in any other time of our history. What is clear is that Mr. Granger appears to be becoming more and more delusional and separated from reality. He has no idea of the problems facing Lindeners, nor in fact in any part of Guyana in particular, or that maybe he does know, but he's convinced himself that everything is well in Guyana and everybody is fine. 30,000 jobs have been lost in our country between 2015 May and now. 7,000 sugar workers lost their jobs. Construction companies have had to lay off people. It's only some of the construction with oil coming on that's putting back some construction, the construction sector a bit better off. The housing program they let collapse. And so thousands, look at what happened in the rice sector. They killed the agreement with Venezuela to try to show that they're big bad Johns. And thousands of rice farmers, thousands of workers working in the rice mills lost their jobs. None of this seems to bother. Of course, we've been saying all the time, with the loss of these jobs, it will impact on NIS. And the capacity of NIS to be stable. And of course, today's admission in the press by I think it's the manager, that the 7,000 sugar workers losing their job had a major impact on the revenue coming into NIS in order to pay benefits for other people who are injured, who are pregnant, who are pensioners. Everything has a cause and effect. You can't terminate 7,000 people and it has no impact on the economy, on the agencies, on revenue generation, on NIS. You can't stop over 300,000 tons of rice going to Venezuela and not have an impact on the economy, on the workers, on their families, on lives here. You cannot introduce 200 draconian taxes and not have an impact on the cost of living for our people. $88 billion in tax have been removed from the pockets of the Guyanese people for them to purchase things. And then everybody's wondering the business is bad. You can go to any part of Guyana, trust me. Business is bad wherever you go. Places are closing down. Small businesses are closing down because they can't make it. And this government is responsible for this happening in our country. But maybe Mr. Granger would not listen to the People's Progressive Party. He would not listen to people like me. But let's go to a survey that was done. Now, he may not agree with the survey either. But the survey that's been done by NACTA, the North American Conference on Teachers, have been doing these polls since about 1990. And so their recent poll in August revealed widespread dissatisfaction with the performance of government in a variety of areas. Voters complained about the crime rate, economy, governance, rising prices, health sector, joblessness, racism, education neglect, and infrastructure, among other matters. People also vented complaints about the arrogance of several government ministers. Some 64% gave the government a negative rating, with 30% giving it a positive rating, and 6% gave no rating or neutral rating. Almost everyone was dissatisfied with the government's handling of crime, the contracts with the oil companies, and the holding of timely elections relating to the no-confidence vote. Three major things: crime, oil, and not holding elections in relation to the no-confidence vote. Some 2/3 that were surveyed felt elections should have been held soon after the CCJ's ruling on the issue of June the 18th. Almost everyone was displeased with GCOM for its lack of readiness to hold elections as required by the Constitution. And I hope GCOM paid attention to this survey too, because when an election body has lost the confidence of the people, it's a very serious indictment of that organization. 70% were unhappy with the handling of the economy. 70% means 7 out of every 10 people are not happy with the handling of the economy. People did not express much confidence in the future of the country, even with oil production on the horizon. Asked if the country is moving in the right or the wrong direction, 84% said wrong direction. 84% said wrong direction. But you know, Granger lives happily in a bubble, saying we will win again. We'll win again, he says. And of course, imagine, he says, after all these things I've described, he then goes on a interview in which, with, of course, the editor-in-chief of Chronicle, and he says, imagine, he says, I have been a good president. End of quote. I, quote, have been a good president. He goes on to say, although there's some disappointments in the last 4 months, I am very confident that I will be re-elected, end quote. This is a gentleman whose legacy is one that is unique to our country's history. He is the first president in the history of Guyana to defy and violate the Constitution. He's the first president to allow levels of corruption in his own administration that would of such levels that it would probably make even Mr. Burnham blush. And remember, Mr. Burnham is his mentor. No matter, my dear friends, what the caretaker government promises at this stage, nothing, however, can remove the fact that the electorate of this country recognizes and knows that this illegal government is petrified to face the elections. What's going on this week? Well, this week is the annual national conference of the Two Shows Council, and it's being held at the Convention Center. The People's Progressive Party welcomed the Two Shows councillors and community leaders at their annual conference. Out of respect for the 200-odd Two Shows and councillors, as invitees, we were invited. We attended the opening of the conference, even though we knew that Granger, the illegal president, and his ministers would be there. We showed respect for our anthem and pledge. We stood for those. But we refused to stand for an illegal president who defied the supreme law of our country. And we have no apologies to make for that. We do not recognize him and his ministers as being anything but usurpers in office, or, if you're a simpler way, squatters in office. What followed as a result of us not standing for the great leader was that the government again showed its true colors. And you know the true colors of the PNC APNU AFC is one of bullyism. And it indicated their state of siege mentality. The president's reception was to be Friday night. The opposition reception was to be Monday night, with agreement with the NTC, the National Two Showers Council. All of a sudden, the president's reception is moved to Monday to clash with the leading opposition reception and dinner. What did the government do? It does what it always does, and that is so predictable. It then, through the NTC chairman, ordered the two showers that they had to go to the president's reception, and they were corralled into buses, not taken to the hotels to make sure they attended the reception at State House. Two showers were rightfully offended. They are elected by their communities and are not shown to be controlled and intimidated by anyone, any government or any political party. No matter which way the government tries to fool, intimidate, and bully people, the Amerindian communities know that it is only after 1992 and under the PPPC administration that the 60-odd communities who had received documents indicating some description of the areas issued in 1976 were able to have their lands demarcated and finally be able to obtain their communal land titles. In fact, all titles held by Amerindian communities in Guyana today were issued by the People's Progressive Party civic in government. Not one land title or extension of land title has been granted since the APNU AFC coalition took office in May 2015. Our people know about the low carbon development strategy that brought, it's the largest pioneer carbon trading scheme for forest carbons, which earned Guyana $250 million revenue and contributed in a significant way to the further development of our country. Unfortunately, the government, Granger government, has repudiated the low carbon development strategy. It's almost as if it's a bad word for them. And all the initiatives designed to enhance national and in particular Amerindian development have been destroyed after long years of work at all levels to find a modern, inclusive national development strategy for the future. The government's own mooted alternative of a green state development strategy remains a mystery, with no specific initiatives to address the development needs of the people. It remains a non-starter with no plan for comprehensive, inclusive development of the country and its people. In its wake, it has left an enormous vacuum. Under the low carbon development strategy, several programs, including multi-year projects, were identified that focused specifically on the development of Amerindian communities. The Amerindian Titling Project, Land Titling Project, the Community Development Plans, the Project for Hinterland Electrification, and the Hinterland ICT Project. All were fully funded when we left office. All have stagnated due to the government's reluctance to move on these issues, or they have been tarnished with corruption and/or monies have been squandered due to corruption. Mr. Ali Koch admitted before Parliamentary Committee on Natural Resources in 2018 that no titles or extensions of lands to Amerindian communities had been issued by his government. Demarcation of title land has remained at standstill. And this is in spite of the fact that $10.7 million had been left by the PPPC administration in the Amerindian Land Titling Project in May 2015. Free, prior, and informed consent, a fundamental international principle, has been repeatedly honored in the breach. One of the most glaring examples is the decision by the government to establish a commission inquiry into lands. Since its promise in 2017 to the NTC regarding the commission inquiry, the government has not kept any of these commitments. The Commission inquiry continues to hang like a sword of Damocles over Amerindian land rights. You have to remember the statements by President Advisor Eric Phillips, Minister Keith Scott, both in letters and Mr. Scott in Parliament, that the Amerindians had too much land, they were avaricious, and of course Mr. Scott said very clearly in Parliament that they threatened that they would not benefit from new oil resources, revenues. No one has ever apologized from the government for these terrible derogatory statements. We are convinced by acts of omission and commission, by words and deeds, that the government's official policy has been one of reversing Amerindian land rights. The new administrative requirement of the submission of a village improvement plan for any community applying for land or an extension, as announced by Alicock, flies in the face of the Amerindian Act and is meant to further stall any titles being granted. During the conference this week, Mr. Alicock nor any government minister have been able to answer questions on Amerindian land rights and the fact that not one title was granted during the APNU government. On the issue of the increase in mining concessions being issued by the government, which is damaging their water resources and their environment, the government has had no answer in this week. I've already quoted for you from the official Gazette of October 5th. There have also been, as we said, other casualties. They wanted to dilute the representation of Amerindians on the Indigenous Peoples Commission. We did not support it, and therefore did not go through, as it required a 2/3 majority. But if you do visit the interior regions of our country, if you think things are hard on the coast, you must see how things have got harder in the interior. The growing government neglect of interior areas and Amerindian communities is visible and palpable. The state of roads, culverts, bridges, and trails are in deplorable state, and villages face restricted travel and movement and escalating cost of living. The main artery connecting the coast to administrative regions 7, 8, and 9 is in worse condition than ever seen in the last 2 decades. The social sector, education, health services, and their infrastructure is declining at a rapid rate, compounded with limited school supplies and facilities, and shortage of essential drugs and medical supplies everywhere and at all levels of the health system. I've already given examples of this on the program in earlier programs, of insufficient number of textbooks, exercise books in the schools. And so Mr. Granger can talk all he wants about the next 10 years, the next decade being the decade of education, and quoting from the US Sustainable Development Goals, with no translation into what that will mean and how will that be implemented in Guyana. And he quotes that they spent $170 billion on education in the last 4.5 years. If that is so, which it is not, then the fact is that he should be doubly, triply, and quadruply shamed that $170 billion have been spent in the education sector, yet children in this country cannot have access to school feeding, cannot have access to their uniform allowances, cannot have access to basic things like exercise books and basic stationery and so on needed in the school, particularly primary and secondary levels. So that, again, this is a problem when a government lands with helicopters and aircraft in the interior, for example, come out with all the pomp and flavor and the photographing, and they shake hands, cut a ribbon, hand over a bus, announce something or other, get back in the plane and gone. That's how governments get divorced from reality, because they do not dialogue and engage with the people to know what the issues are. They don't look around and see how people are struggling. And so Garrido Lowe is an example of that in the convention this week, where she's tried to answer the PUP statement by speaking of the school feeding program. The fact that she got no applause when she spoke about it because she didn't tell the truth. She quoted a figure of $500 per child per day for a meal. In fact, the allocation is 175 Guyana dollars per day per child for the school year. But the problem is that it's not only that, is that she told an untruth of 500 versus $175 a day per child, because she was trying to equate that with the $10,000 cash care program. She did a mess at the mathematics, by the way. But the school feeding program and the school uniform programs that were critical to, one, let children come to school, be able to eat something nourishing, be able to focus and pay attention. These two programs have been faltering all over the place. The school uniform vouchers have been given out discriminatorily. Some parts of Guyana get none. Some have not got school uniform allowances or materials for the last 2 years. You then have also the school feeding program that is not applied in every school across Guyana. It is not. And that in fact in a number of areas, the village economy project which Guyana had with the school feeding program, particularly in interior areas, have all been dismantled, and they believe in fetching in stuff bought from Guyana. The increase in the cost of living due to the 200 draconian tax measures and fees of the APNU AFC government in the Amerindian communities the cost of living has always been higher in the interior areas, but have worsened dramatically, driving people into greater poverty because of the 200 tax measures. Due to the state of the economy and the lack of opportunities for youth, and in particular all Amerindians, has reached alarming proportions. There are few jobs available in these hinterland regions, nor are there jobs on the coast to offer alternatives to Amerindians and hinterland residents. And so we can call all the projects they've terminated: the hinterland electrification, the hinterland ICT program, the termination of 1,972 Amerindian community service officers, the dismantling of the youth programs we had and entrepreneurial skills training programs we had, the termination of the cash care program, the limited access to scholarships for interior children, the funding for the community development plans being given out discriminatorily, even though they've been approved since 2014, 2015, and I pointed out the school uniforms. It is only one body who's responsible for the state of our country the way it is, and that is the APNU AFC government, led by no other than Mr. David Granger. We believe that all this running into communities, as we've spoken about with David G. Satchels and other goodies, while ignoring the main issues these communities face of lack of jobs, economic development, and access to goods and services, and of course, most of all, opportunities. It is this frenzy of spending of taxpayers' money which is also being siphoned off for personal gain. We have come up with a 14, 15-point plan in terms of what we will immediately do in the Amerindian areas in terms of restoring the dismantled programs and new programs, and our track record is there for anybody to see. We will also, and we've made it publicly very clear, that in April 2020, after the elections and after we won, we know we'll win, that we will be holding a national conference of the Amerindian leaders, communities, Tushaus, to talk about the resumption of the development of the Amerindian communities following the election. So that we have already named it. April is the month when we'll be doing this. Before we switch over to calling in, one last thing in terms of the claims and objections. Well, today's October 10th, as we started out the program saying, do you realize that it's only 143 days more for us to reach E-Day, Election Day? 4 months and 20 days, not too far away. We've had to wait over 9 months, and we made our point. We've won our case over and over again. And so this is the last leg. This is the last leg, 143 days more. And then we will have elections and we will have a new government. So we have to put ourselves in order, my dear friends. For all Guyanese, your right to vote is sacred. It's a fundamental right. And it should be treasured and to be used wisely. And of course, we have the claims and objections going on. GCOM has said that they are going to open new cluster centers. As of today, they have not. Many communities have not received the list being posted as required by law. And in the order of GCOM, it said that the list should be up by September 30th, before it started. But then major areas, particularly the interior, where lists have not been posted at all. And that, in fact, GCOM intends that when they go in to do mobiles, that's when people will see the list for the first time. This is totally unacceptable. Last week, we advised people about how to go about making their claims and objections. These are those that are new claimants who are going to be eligible to be 18 by December 31st, 2019. Those who've had to do name changes based on marriage or divorce and so forth. And persons who would like they've lost their ID card, they want to replace it, etc. And so we spoke in detail on that last week about the requirements and what you have to carry in. So let me pause here for now and let us go to the phones. Remember, just one last thing, claims ends. The claims part, that is new claims, can be made up to November the 4th. Objections can be made all this time up to November the 11th. And then the whole thing, they will do the assessment of the objections. So let us go now to the phones. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
You said so much things, and it's all been happening. It's sad. It's sad as a country. We've worked so hard to cut our debts. How many? You should make notes of all those things that since 1992, this struggle to bring a country on the foot again, that people would come back to this country. And yes, I love what has been doing, what the government has been doing, the PPP government has been doing. The roads, remember potholes. I remember driving my little Mini in the potholes. All you can find in Main Street, it was potholes, nothing else. We were eating rice flour. Those are the days that when PPP took office. Then that was done away. The young people don't know about those days. And that is why when I can get some people to talk to, I'll talk to them. I get 5 persons the last time to tell me, yes, I'll go and vote.
Good, very
because
good.
I asked them, you have a cell phone. What is the cost of the cell phone? And yes, they got it from their family, but you got a cell phone. But do you have food at home to eat? Yes, we have roti. In my days, I had 4 children. I had no flour. I had little that I could buy 1 and 2 times. We planted. I remember when potato was come back into the country. My children didn't eat potatoes because they didn't know about potatoes.
Yeah, right.
Right, so they didn't eat potatoes. Those are the things we have to speak about. Let the young ones, and we have to. I have been trying all the time, all the years, to ask the young people. They don't know. Their grandmother teach them. Their mother didn't teach them. So we have to get the young people to understand, get them to understand what we as parents went through, and we have worked hard to see them go out as they are. It didn't come easy. It come by Mr. He went to those countries. In England, how much debt did they wrote for us? I remember those days.
Yeah.
I don't know all of the details, but I know most of the debt was write-off because we were a very, very poor country.
Yeah,
that was almost equivalent to Haiti.
Okay, no, it's true. When we left office in 1964, Guyana was the 3rd ranking country in the Western Hemisphere. When we won elections in October, first free and fair elections in October 1992, we were the bottom with Haiti and Bolivia. Okay, madam, we'll take some other calls coming in. Thank you as usual for calling. You keep up the spirit. You take care. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gail Teixeira.
Yes, good afternoon.
I got a problem. I was watching Tom.
Yes.
And while on, I see this man, what his name is Graham. Right? And he's saying that the PPP killed 400 African children. And Mr. Green had to pull him up. He said he's not 400 African descent. His majority was African descent. If Rahamana doesn't know where to start, he must learn. I don't know if he owns the station. And you got to understand that the whole of Guyana just listen to that program. People in the third world and some people in the fourth world.
Yeah.
But if Rahamana know what he's saying, you better run where you talk. Because he's saying pure nonsense.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks. The PNC has made much of this issue, but first of all, when they look at the document they submitted to the UN, there's actually a document the PNC did submit to the UN claiming 400 Afro-Guyanese were murdered by the PBPC. When you go through the list, many of the people were not dead. People were alive. They were not exclusively Afro-Guyanese. They included people such as policemen who were and soldiers who were killed in altercations with the criminals. And they were also, as I said, people who died of natural causes, heart attacks or car accidents, etc., having nothing to do with the crime wave. So that the whole document, and that's why we have said that we are prepared to be part of a mega commission of inquiry into what really transpired in the 2002 to 2008 crime wave, and in fact we're willing to go even earlier, 1960s, 70s, 80s, 1997, 2001. We're quite prepared to go in that direction. Okay, let's take another call. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gail.
Hi, good afternoon.
I just want to tell the young lady that called earlier, she should handle it. I consider myself as a young man.
Yeah.
And my household is 13 a week.
Wow.
And we vote for APNU AFC the last time because personally, we don't want change. Just change things with appealing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But as we know, be careful what you ask for. And we get what we ask for. If it makes people in this household is a mixed household.
Right.
So we don't make up your mind, we going for PPP. So let's share. The young people have done realize what going on. They can't fool with them. We know who is PNC. No, we don't know. They can't change.
Right.
They try to change their name to it and fool people, but they can't change who they really is in their heart.
Right.
And we see who is it. So the young lady that called earlier, let's share it. If he didn't get this far, it's something issue. He didn't get it.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. We have some regular callers who are very, very positive. The two ladies are very positive when they call in. But clearly, it is a lot of people, as the caller said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And so a lot of people are not going to be shamed. A lot of people are saying no. They believed what they were told in the elections of May 2015, that PPP was responsible for everything and that they had the answers for everything, that they could turn this country around. And what people have learned is that what they've done is that they have destroyed and undermined this country, its constitution, its legislature, its judiciary, its economy, the social services. In fact, a taxi, when I was coming here, said to me, he used a phrase I wasn't familiar with. I didn't know this phrase of iron ants. And I didn't know what that meant because I've never heard of iron ants. And he said, no, the iron ants are those ants that eat everything, metal, wood, and they destroy. So they get something today and the next day it's damaged. They don't know how to take care of things. And so he talked about the government being iron ants, that everything they touch. And maybe it's like Walter Rodney. When Walter Rodney in the 70s talked about the Midas touch. This was quite a revolutionary thing when he said it, that everything that Burnham touched turned to S, ending in T. Unlike Midas, who was a king, that everything he touched turned to gold. So he called Burnham, that Burnham had the Midas touch, but didn't turn things into gold, turned things into the four-letter word beginning with S. And so this was quite radical in the 70s, someone to say about a president. And I'm sure if someone were to say that today about Mr. Granger, be highly offended. But Mr. Burnham and Mr. Granger are slightly different characters. But clearly, the PNC colors, the PNC as a party has not changed from the time when it was formed to now. It remains the same party with the same mentality to do with bullyism, intimidation, and ruling in an exclusive way and not an inclusive way. Oops. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Shearer.
Hi, good afternoon.
That last call, I would like to follow up on what he says.
Yes.
Indeed, that these is modern days.
Yes.
This is not the days. We were educated under the PPP regime. So this is not the days whereby they fool the young people anymore.
Yes.
The young people are educated so we can able to differentiate right from wrong and make good choices. And we know that they are not good choices, so we wouldn't choose them. Another thing I want to ask you, if you can educate the public on this, just shine some light on this claims and objections, because very many people do not actually understand about these claims and objections and what we have to do as citizens. So if you can shine some light on that and let the people know what they have to do, they have to go claim their names on the list and object to it, whatever. We have to know about that.
Okay, thank you. That's very nice of you to remind me.
Yes.
I had done that last program, but I agree with the call. You have to keep doing it each time so people become familiar. There are 29 registration centers across the country, and there should be one in your region or not far from you. They are supposed to post the list for your area in the school or the church nearest you, so you're supposed to see it. Some may be posted on NDC buildings, etc. But the list for your area is supposed to be posted in a public place where you can go and check. Party members of the PPP are walking around with the same 2019 GCOM list to help people check and see if they're on the list. If you don't see any of these comrades, you can also call Freedom House, where we have, you can call in and we are able to go onto the website of the list, GCOM website. It's an interactive website where you can put in your ID number or your name, and it will show you which division you're in if you're not sure where you are. So that's important for you to know. You can call Freedom House and they will help you in terms of looking to see if you can find your name. Remember, claims are for those who are eligible to vote and whose birthdays will be 18 before December 31st, 2019. The claims persons, for example, who were never registered, for some reason they were studying abroad or they were living abroad, they've come back home, for example, a number of the Guyanese Venezuelans who have returned home, for example, who would not have been on the voters list, many of them may not have been or they may not have been of age, they can go to a center and make a claim in their area. They have to be able to walk with a birth certificate or a valid passport, right? So that they do have to take the fact, that's what they have to show to make a claim. So they have to go to the center, not people coming to your house, like in the house-to-house registration period, which ended in August. These are people who you have to go voluntarily in and take your birth certificate. Those who are born out of Guyana, but who are born of a Guyanese parent, and they're living in Guyana, they can come, they bring their original birth certificate from the country where they were born and a valid passport. And so they bring that with one of the parents' birth certificates, that's Guyanese, and they can then be registered. There are persons who have lived in Guyana for a long time, who are not Guyanese, who became citizens, and they have fulfilled the requirement of 7 years 5 years continuous residence and 7 years coming into Guyana. They may have done it by marriage to a Guyanese or be living that length of time. Those persons who are citizens of Guyana by naturalization need to walk with, if they're married to a Guyanese, they have to walk with a marriage certificate and their registration certificate they would have gotten, or that they walk with their certificate of citizenship that they have acquired by the fact that they lived here for 5 years and more. Commonwealth citizens are allowed to register, but they must be here legally for 1 year. And they too have to walk with their valid passport to show that they've been here for 1 year. So it isn't someone who's running in and out of the country. They must be here resident for 1 year. And so you have a variety of persons who are eligible to make claims. There are also persons who have lost their ID card, for example. They need to be able, they'll go into the center, they will get a form to apply for the new ID, and this will have to be signed. They'll take that form back to a commissioner of oaths to be able to have that verified and signed that in fact your ID card was lost. Or if you've reported it to the police, for example, you have something from the police showing that you did report it was lost. Persons who are willing to need to make transfers. People move around the country to jobs and so on, for jobs out to study. And so many people between 2015 and now need to do transfers. They have moved in the interior, they've moved to Georgetown or wherever, and it is easier for you that you do a transfer to where you're living now. Because what is very clear, on election day, people then become nervous about traveling from one part of the country. So if you're in Georgetown and your name is on the quarantine list, you'll say, no, I'll go back and vote in quarantine. Sometimes you then get nervous about moving around. The same thing with Essequibians. So the view is that we're advising you to make a transfer. Go to the nearest registration center and you walk with your ID card and you make an application. Now what happens is they will check the voters list, say that you were living in Essequibo, now you're in Georgetown. They will check the voters list to make sure your name is on the list in Essequibo, and you will then do your transfer where you're living now, so that you go to the center nearest you now. You don't have to go back to Essequibo to do a transfer. They will then fill out that, and then your name would be verified, because all those who are making claims and transfers, GCOM will then come and make a visit to your house to make sure that who you claim to be and where you claim to live is in fact right, correct. And so they will have to do that during the process. So it's important for people to know. Married women who've got married in the last few years, who want to change their name on the voters list to their husband's name, can make a claim. They have to take in their marriage certificate, and also, if they're a new registrants, their original birth certificate and or passport. So that you can, if you're married and you want to change your name to your husband's name, but your name is on the voters list, to do a correction, a change on it by a claim. If you're never been registered, then you have to carry your birth certificate. A woman who has been divorced or widowed and wants to return to her maiden name can do so. If it's in the case of divorce, she wants to go back to her maiden name. She walks with her absolute from the court saying that she is now, the marriage is annulled, and then she can, and her own birth certificate as well, and she reverts back. If in the case her husband has died, then she walks with the death certificate as well as her birth certificate to show that she wishes to revert to her original name. In some cases, names have been changed. And so what they need to walk with, this is by a court order, they need to walk with a copy of the deed poll and the ID card, for example. In the case of adoption, where someone was adopted, that they walk with their adoption certificate, because their name may have been one thing and their name has changed. But these are persons who would be already on the list for making changes for what is reflected on the voters list. What I will do every week, we'll keep going over some of this to make sure that you don't take this seriously, please. Because on election day, if your name is not on the voters list, you can't vote. And so that would be a great shame, because all Guyanese need to exercise their right to vote. It's important, and that you can't have a chance to vote if your name is not on the voters list. So please take this seriously. I know some people say, I'll do it. Well, November 4th isn't far away from now. So see if you can get your act together so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. It doesn't take a long time usually with GCOM to do all of this. But you do have to go to the registration centers. And if you're not sure, as I said, call Freedom House. They will, and I did forget again, I'm sorry, to walk with the numbers that you should call. But they are announcing it on Freedom Radio, and it is put into the Mirror newspaper, which you can get online, and you can look at online. So the technician is telling me to stop. He's given me a few minutes, and I thank him very much for allowing me to be able to share some public information that I hope GCOM is doing, but I haven't seen too much of what GCOM's doing in terms of educating the public on what they need to do. So until they do, I'll try my best, and they know the PBP is trying their best to educate our voters and our people. So, my dear friends, you have a blessed week. Take care of yourselves. Don't drink and drive. We have these terrible accidents with people that have lost their lives due to drinking and driving or talking on the cell phone. Please, please, please. We want everyone to be healthy and strong, because after March the 2nd, we have to get this country back on its feet. We need all of you here. Whether you voted for APNU, voted for us, voted for ANUG, voted for whoever. This is Guyana. It's ours, and it belongs to all of us, and we need to build our nation. So take care of yourselves. Don't overdo it. And you have a great weekend, and all the best to you. And I'll see you on Thursday, right here, as usual, 12:30 to 1:30. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye. Ta-ta.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
Job is secure.
Only the first round.
That's right. What do you say, John?
Woodpecker.
Woodpecker. Got the idea, BG? It'll come to you little by little.
Now, this may be a match.
I don't believe it.
It might be.
Well, let's find out.
She fell in love with a carpenter.
A carpenter. Not a match. But it is a human.
Ha!
I said buzzsaw.
A buzzsaw. All those things would be self-destructive to someone made of wood.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
You
tripped
see.
you. I didn't
That's
mean
all
to.
right. I know you didn't. Ethel.
Really hip ass.
Howdy doody, son of the puppet psychiatrist. Doc, I must be self-destructive. You see, I have fallen in love with a...
Axe.
ant.
That's a good answer.
That is a very good answer.
Was he woodpecker?
Woodpecker is the what? What?
Axe.
X.
Woodpecker.
Woodpecker. Now you got the idea, PG. All right. They get easier from here on out.
They do?
Okay. Now we've got a little message we want to do with America. Here it is. Pay attention.
10 years ago, we started Legacy Box. If you're like us, you have a box of old videotapes, film reels, and photos just to saves these memories by professionally digitizing them on DVD